Hello and welcome to another episode of Throttle Stop Garage. Alright, sorry I've been away for a little while. It's spring, right? So finally the snow is gone, everything's been cleaned up in the yard, lawn's been fixed, and just sort of general hilarity with my other cars actually. So I'm going to have a video up a little bit later showing you some resurrection of a beater that I bought. But anyway, that's not the purpose of this episode. This episode, we got to get back on the Canadian project and get this thing rolling along. So we're going to have a look at sway bars. So this is where we left off last time. We've got the brake lines are now on the frame, so the frame is completely done. And actually I finished off the little lines, the double flare connections. I put all the proper fastenings on. The steering rack is back in, and we're starting to work on the sway bar, right? So this is that NASCAR style 3-piece sway bar that I'm going to be running in the car. Actually, just let me, we'll just take you in and we'll show you what we're doing. The sway bar part here, and you can see these arms, which are massive. They come off pretty easily. Anyway, so that's the arm. This is the part here. So this is, it's just a flame cut steel part. It's got the right spline obviously cut in it, but they come straight. All right, so that's not going to work. We're going to have to make that fit the car properly, and they all have to have that done. I don't have the arm on the other side, so I don't have to worry about the timing. Everything here has gone in and slid together really nicely, actually. The frame, it's just sitting on sort of 3 contact points, so it's a full sketch here right now. So I have to be very careful. I'm going to clamp up the back of it just to make sure we don't have any accidents. I've only got the single pivot on the front because I don't want to scratch the primer. But it did seem to me that this was going to be a whole lot easier to do outside of the car than once it's inside the car and I have to roll around on the ground. So all we need to do here is just take this arm and give it a little bend out. We'll have to cut it, of course. We'll give it a bend out and a spot to put in my end link, right? So the end links that I'm using here, these are Aurora bushings. Again, if you're going to buy rod ends for anything, buy Aurora. Don't cheap out on this stuff. This is they're expensive, but they're good. These ones happen to be metric, in keeping with the theme of getting rid of all of the non-metric bolts on a car that's not supposed to have any bolts that are metric. Anyway, so that end link is going to fit and sit in there, and then I can turn the end link on this shackle to whatever angle I need. I will put a couple of holes in the end of the bar just for some adjustment. Of course, the only way this particular bar will adjust is going to be on the bar. It'll get stiffer. Right, so if it's not stiff enough, we'll be able to shorten the length of this arm here, and that'll make the bar stiffer. If I need the bar softer, if this is too much roll resistance, then I'll have to change the bar. Right, we'd have to change down a size. Luckily, as I said in a previous video, I went with the largest bar that I could buy for this particular setup. For no particular special reason other than you can always tune down from there. And I spent, well, me and my friend Matt spent many months, hi Matt, we spent many months working through the calculations, mostly him. He's much better at this stuff than I am. So we just, we played with calculators and things, but truth be told, it's not like it's a black art. It's just, well, parts of it are a black art, right? There is a science to it, but it's just not written in books and things that we could read, or at least it wasn't understandable for us to get it perfect. What you can do is get a first good approximation, and then you work from there with the actual vehicle, because everything is an estimate. You're estimating weight, you're estimating all kinds of things, like what's the individual loads, all that stuff. So who cares? It doesn't matter. The arm would be a common part to whatever bar that I'm going to use. Anyway, so once we get it bent, then we'll be able to, again, we'll just be able to make it stiffer, and shortening a bar up by an inch or two actually makes quite a bit of difference, so it's not nothing. Anyway, so as we get playing with it, then the bars being flame cut present a bit of a problem for how to do any of this, and it sort of stalled me out, as things will stall everyone out. This one stalled me out for quite a while. because you need to make this reasonably accurately. So I thought, well, how am I going to do that? Well, the best way to do it is to pick up this particular hole. So that's the hole, that's the pinch bolt, right, that clamps it down. So I'm going to be able to set this in a jig. Then I've got the bar marked for where I think the bend should start. I'm going to have to heat it with a torch, and I'd like a reasonably large radius. I'm not putting it in my press and giving it a poke in the press. The biggest radius that I have is 1 inch, and I don't think that'll be enough. Then at the end of the day, I mean, I've got the length of the arm, and I can put a snipe if I need to on the end of that, heat it up, and then we'll just bend it over to what we need. We'll make a wire template first, we'll get it heated up, and then we'll get them bent. Bent, cut, drilled, tapped. If I get that done in this episode, that's going to be a wrap. So let's see what we get done. Alright, so over here at the vise, I've got a couple of pieces of scrap channel. This is just like it's 3-inch channel. Yeah, 3-inch channel. Nothing special about it. I've used it for many jigs in the past. But here's what's going to happen. Again, we're going to use just a little bit of round steel as our locating pin. Then the arm will come up. It'll fit on that locating pin. And I'm going to register that to the edge of this, the start of this jig. Okay, so that's going to be the start part. Then the sides of the arm will be held in place. I'm just going to weld these pieces of scrap angle. They're just 2 inch by 3/16, so it should be heavy enough to handle it, because we're going to be putting a load. Now we're going to be putting a pivot point out here, but was still going to be a load translated back to that. So I wanted that heavy enough to sort of handle that. Anyway, so that'll fit in. The arms are symmetrical, so I only need to make the jig to go one way. Anyway, so that's going to make things actually quite a bit easier. Okay, so this is going to be my radius die, so it's 1 3/8 120 wall DOM tube, so it's kind of fancy, but I had an offcut. So I'll just use that. That's going to be close enough. It's a nice big radius, so it should be fine. And then, of course, I've made the ubiquitous wire pattern. So I've made this wire pattern. That pattern I've put onto an arm mounted onto the car and made sure that it's got the right angle in it. Then I've put it into the hole, okay, so that this edge here is locating into the front edge of that hole in the arm, so I can actually put that up against the jig before I weld all the pieces together. Actually, I can locate it anywhere along the jig, and it'll be, you know, close enough for bending an arm to get the angle right. Then I can just slip my radius into where it's needed, so that'll work out well. And then I can also just tack on a stop or something here, because this also can lay on the front face and tell me what the angle is. And then I can move this out, and I'll just continue to bend the arm until the 2 points intersect back here over on the tail. Okay, so that's going to work out real well. It's just a little bit of welding here to get this done, and then we should be ready to warm it up with the torch and get her done. Alright, so now we're getting ready to get this thing welded up. So I've just got a little homemade V-block actually to get those pins lined up nicely, and grab the MIG and get this thing stuck together. There's the wire, trying to position where that where the radius die basically has to go. Alright, so everything slips in real nice. So in this part here, I'm just marking off with the chalk, because it's not going to burn up with the torch, with the soapstone. Just marking off where the areas are that I want to heat. I want to keep that heated zone to be pretty consistent between the two parts. Anyway, so we'll get a torch fired up here, obviously, and then you can see the marks on the top. So warming the bottom a little bit, not worry too much about the top, just physics will take care of that. And then obviously I chopped lots of this out. It took several minutes to warm it up, but you want to get it to be good and warm. Of course, right as I'm doing the bend here, my phone goes off, which is really quite funny. But it took quite a bit of effort to get it to bend. And then it turned out that the edge of the jig was the correct angle. So that's just dumb luck. I was going to put that stop in there to look at it, but I didn't need it. So that was right there. That looks real nice. Really happy with that. A little wire brush to clean the schmutz off of it. Ready for the next phase. How did we do? I think I'll live with that, folks. Okay, I didn't get any video of this part, but there you can see 0.2 of a degree in terms of separation between those two parts. So happy with that, right? So now these brackets need to get tacked onto the other bracket. So break out the TIG, put the tacks in place, and then finally, I managed to get arc shots. If anyone's interested, I did this using a 1000 neutral density filter. I think I could probably step it up just a little bit. I might throw another neutral density filter in there just so you can see that a little better. But you just focus in on where it's going to go and get rolling with the filming. So I gave it some sort of tight focus in there. The camera seems to work just great. No problems getting this filmed. And luckily the welds actually turned out pretty nice. I was going a little slow just because, in fact, everything's in the way. Like the camera, you can even see a couple of spots here where the welding wire bumps into the camera. Oops. Anyway, that all worked out really nicely. So I'm happy with how that all worked out. You can see the way that weld actually goes in. This is just a nice little fillet corner weld. So I don't think I'm pulsing at this point, but I pulse sometimes at the start, and then I'll once the puddle's kind of established nicely, then I'll go at it a little bit more seriously. All right, so here's the photos of the finished product. Super happy. The welds all turned out real beautiful, all Instagrammy. Anyway, final fitment, getting ready to cut the arms. So of course I got to drive myself a little bit crazy with the measurement. You know, this is just a habit. Turned out the bar is not perfectly aligned in the front edge of that frame. I hit it with a hammer a couple of times just to try to square it, if you recall, and that's ended up making some measurements wrong. So the bar, of course, can't be different lengths. It's all got to be, the arms have to be the same length. So I just said to myself, stop being crazy and just get this sucker cut. So over to the drill press we go. If you've never done this trick before, when you've got irregularly shaped parts, I have a couple of bolts that actually live on my drill press. And I put them in to stop the thing from rotating. Don't try to stop something like this with your hand. You'll end up being sacrificial. So there we go with that. Then countersink the holes prior to tapping. And this is what happens when you use a tap that's just meant for cleaning. So those cheap tap kits that you get at the dollar store. No, I got them at Canadian Tire. It's not a real tap. There's a difference. So a real tap, you can actually, don't worry too much about breaking when it's M10 by 1.5. So there's no problem there. Wind them in, wind them out. Just be real careful as you go and they'll be straight. Then buffing off the edges with the new belt grinder. It's a little safer and less scary than the big one. And away we go. So now everything's fitted in. Perfectly happy with this. Okay, that's a wrap for episode 47. I want just to thank you for coming along on the journey with me. You can see we've got the anti-roll bar arms built in, bent, drilled and tapped, and broken taps, and all. So super happy actually with the way everything turned out. It's all pretty much as per the plan. So that's great. So that means the frame at this point now can come off the bench. There really isn't anything else for me to do with it up here. And I can move it up underneath the car and start getting that welded in place. Still a few things to finalize on the car first before it goes in. But I'm moving along on all that already. So never fear, it won't be a month until the next episode comes out. Anyway, just... sorry for the long delay, but thanks for coming along, and we'll catch you on the next episode.